It's actually, I didn't run back. This is just such an exciting hearing. It seems like from your testimony and but mainly from your testimony, that like every one of you in some way or another is responsible for getting prices down. That's what it seemed like from your testimony. And I think Senator Young touched on this, but I want to try to go over it again for myself. The U.S. spends more on prescription drugs than any industrialized country, in part because drug prices are higher in the U.S. than in any other country. The drug industry pushes back and says that these price comparisons don't take into account the discounts that manufacturers give to insurers and other actors in the system. So to cut through that, I'd like to ask you some questions. Let's use the drug Advair, which is an asthma inhaler example. Where is that produced? It's produced in North Carolina. So this is a drug that's produced in the United States. Ms. Reilly, what is the list price for Advair in the United States? And how does it compare to the cost in Canada, France, and Germany?
I honestly do not know the list price of Advair off the top of my head, Senator. Okay. I'd have to get back to you on that.
Sure. That's very understandable. I want to ask you the price of every drug. See how you do. No. A Bloomberg News report from 2015 found that the list price, this is the list price for Advair, was $309.60 in the United States. Accounting for, say, a 50% discount, then the price would be $154.80, which is still higher than the price in Canada, which in 2015 was $74.12. The price in Germany, which was $37.71. And the price in France, which was $34.52. Ms. Reilly, why are prices so much higher in the United States for a drug produced in the United States? And this is true for drugs that are produced in the United States and not produced in the United States. Why are they so much higher? I think Americans really want to know this, and I think they want to know this because you guys talked about research. Americans pay for a lot of the basic research, right?
Yes.
Yeah, through NIH.
And our industry, yes.
But much of it through the taxpayer pays directly to the NIH to do the basic research. Most of the research you do is not in your industry, it's not basic research.
We do a fair amount of basic research.
You do a fair amount.
Yes.
Most of it is not basic research. And I'll give you the figures on that. We'll call that up in a second.
I'm aware.
These higher prices in the United States support high-level profits and some research and development costs, but we also pay these high prices because of the way our system is structured. The laws we set and the clout of the drug industry. For example, Congress passed a law that prohibits the federal government from negotiating with drug manufacturers for lower prices for Medicare, which is the single largest payer for prescription drugs. In those other countries, you have the government able to bargain with the pharmaceutical companies. All of you presented yourself as part of the piece that keeps the prices down. Why are the prices so much higher in this case, assuming a 50% discount from the list price, in a number of cases twice as high, 4 times as high, Canada, France respectively, and more than 4 times as high in Germany? Why? Americans want to know why.
I think, and I'm happy to start, we do have a different system in the U.S. relative to other European countries. We actually compensate companies for the innovation and the value of the medicines that they bring. I would argue in many European countries, the prices are artificially depressed. They tend to also pay more when a medicine goes generic, and they use fewer generics. So in total, our systems are spending, if you compared on average how much we spend, yes, they probably do spend a little bit less. I would argue, though, that our country incentivizes new therapies and innovation to come to market. And then when that period of time, when a patent expires and exclusivity is gone, 90% of the market, 95% of the market shifts overnight to low-cost generics. In that system that we have, we are able to support a broader innovation ecosystem. You know, the fact that we have 90% generics here, and in most European countries it's 50 to 60%, in part because they don't incentivize their entry, they don't incentivize the dropping of price here. We do so in a way that additional resources are able to fuel the next generation of therapies for patients.
I would suggest it's very small comfort for the Minnesotans that I visit around my state who can't pay for their pharmaceuticals. And I would suggest to you that this is a longer discussion, but why Americans have to ask, why do Americans pay more, 2 times as much, 4 times as much for our pharmaceuticals, many of which we produce, many of which we've done the basic research for through the NIH? We have to pay. Why does the American consumer have to pay more than the Canadian consumer for the same drug, more than the German consumer, more than the French consumer?
Senator, I would also argue...
Okay, go ahead.
I was going to say, you know, there is a case here for the need for stronger trade agreements to ensure that other countries, particularly European countries, are paying more of their fair share.
So the answer is just to make them pay more?
No, I think, you know, prices here to potentially fall. It would also permit more money to go back into research and development, which over time lowers the cost of therapies, both innovative therapies as well as generics.
Okay, anybody else on the panel care to comment?
Senator, if I could just add, just to reinforce a comment previously made, to say that all drugs are more expensive in the United States fails to recognize the distinction, Ms. Reilly talked about it, between brands and generics. It is a carefully balanced, it historically has been a carefully balanced ecosystem created by Hatch-Waxman, where as a country we had made a decision in the 80s to actually make the investment for the ability to bring novel therapeutics to market sooner rather than later, and then ultimately get a utilization rate and lower cost generics than we have in the rest of the world. So to a question that was asked earlier, why shouldn't we consider importing generics from Canada, by example? They're more expensive in Canada, so I'm not sure why we would import something that's less expensive here to begin with.
I bet the idea, and I approve of being able to import, I bet you the idea would be to import the drugs that are cheaper.
Yes,
That's
sir.
just my guess about what consumers would do. And I don't know, I used to be in comedy, and I almost think that your answer there was a tad absurd, which is, of course, we're not saying we need the right to import the same drug that's more expensive in the other country. Do you understand kind of the absurdity of saying that?
Senator, my intention in saying that was to look at policy and understand that the markets operate fundamentally differently.
Okay,
the commoditized market in the United States is what drives generic prices lower than they are in other developed markets.
Okay.
That was my only point.
Thank you. But I do want to say that if you look at the whole universe of drug prices, we pay more. And we pay a lot more. And you're acknowledging that. That's what I'm talking about.